Yo, it's your boy Mikey Blessed. Today I got my boy with me and we want to talk about a new type of MMA fight league that could be coming out soon. It's definitely something I want to do. I've seen so many legends, UFC legends and boxing legends go out on their ass because they get to an older age and they don't really know what else they can do besides be a competitive fighter. And by the time you pass the age of 33, the clock is pretty much running out. And especially if you've been knocked out a few times, you've had a lot of surgeries, you've had a lot of fights, got a lot of miles on you, your career just kind of comes to a crashing halt. And even when some of these guys start to fight a little lesser competition, it seems like it's almost too late. They can't take any more damage, their fight IQ isn't there, and they really just start to deteriorate. And people start to say, hey, this guy should not be fighting anymore. I actually like something that Conor McGregor brings up when guys are on the outs of their career. He usually says, hey, you don't need to retire, but you need to find the right competition. If you're, Chuck Liddell and you're 56 years old, you don't need to be fighting John Jones. Right. You need to be fighting a guy that's your age and your experience, and possibly a guy who's been knocked out as many times as you as well, so that it's some kind of fair form of competition. Now, even if you get to that point, you're still in a fight where you can get your head ripped off. Right. So I propose a new league for MMA fighters that are either getting into their career first, in the beginning, or they're exiting their prime, guys who want to compete without getting knocked out, basically. You can only get knocked out so many times in combat sports or football or something like that before your career is pretty much dried up. So I propose to start a league, and here are going to be the differences. Number one, there are no head strikes allowed. If you throw head strikes or you land head strikes, you get 3 shots and you're out. That's it. You get disqualified after 3 violations. This league would be bare knuckle, and the reason for that is because of there being no head strikes. I would like to see bare knuckle, because that would make grappling and ground and pound a lot more effective. Think about hitting somebody from close range with an MMA glove with the padding over it versus being able to sneak a smaller punch in there, bare knuckle, and land with your actual knuckle, to cause more, damage or pain. Now, another thing I would like to change would be, and also with the grappling, your gloves aren't getting grabbed as well. I know that affects the grappling a lot, but I'd also like to see no weight cutting, hydration testing, so that these guys, can recover from the damage that they're taking, and they don't have to worry about weight cutting, especially at an older age, which makes them more prone to serious injuries. So I think that would make things a lot more fair. And the third thing is no rounds. I don't want any rounds in this league. The fight is going to either be 15 minutes or 25 minutes, championship fight or regular fight, because I believe that having rounds in a fight allows a fighter to take more damage. If you got, check, let's say, check like, trying to think, guys who just escaped. Okay, right here. Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. These guys were fighting. At the end of the first round, Alex Pereira got punched, and he almost got dropped, and then the round ended. If that fight had ended there, if there was no rounds and the fight went another 30 seconds and he got knocked out or taken out, he wouldn't have been able to take all that extra damage that he took throughout the fight. And I think fighters kind of thrive on that, like they can explode and rest, so they don't have the same, cardio some of the other fighters who would be able to outlast them. I just think it makes it a lot more realistic, and ironically, it kind of makes it safer. So you're talking about no head strikes, bare knuckle, no rounds, no weight cutting.
That's a lot of stamina. Because stamina is what you're really talking about, is this endurance, and basically, I like the idea of it's not a street fight, but it's getting closer to as real life as it can be, as far as not having the rounds. No gloves, that's a big thing. That's a lot of bruised ribs and crap. But the grappling, the movement, and everything else, it's really just about trying to extend the life of the fighter, like within the actual fighting world. Mm-hmm. So I get the idea. And it's just gonna, the amount of stamina and endurance they're gonna have to acquire is gonna be vastly different. Like you were just saying, I like the idea just because it is still a sport, and there's no reason for people to, have concussion after concussion after concussion. You want to see who the better fighter is. That's the point. It is a combat contact type fight, but the reality is there's no reason for people, unless you really need to hurt something, that would be a street fight, something like that. Then yeah, but for entertainment, for these purposes, to basically just see who's a better warrior, there's no call for the added. I agree with you 100%.
So, we're talking about no head strikes. So a guy's stance is going to be a little bit lower because he's going to focus on protecting his body and his legs. So I think that's going to encourage more grappling. It's be like, if I really want to take it to this guy's ribs, I need to take him down where I can hold him down and beat him up. Now, a very good friend of mine said, hey, I'd rather take a broken rib, or I'd rather take a knockout than a bunch of broken ribs. And I said, yes, if you're planning on only having one fight your entire life, I'd rather take the knockout as well. Broken ribs, broken femur, torn ligaments, you can heal all that stuff and actually be stronger than you were before it happened if you're down to do the physical therapy properly. If you get knocked out, you can't get that concussion back. Even with all the technology in the world, it's going to affect you forever. So you can't reverse that, but you can reverse a torn ACL, a broken arm, or what have you. So when you talk about the longevity of a fighter and the longevity of a human being, I think this is the better way to fight all day. Like he said, when you take away the rounds, it makes the fight a lot more realistic. So for instance, if you're a couple of kids in high school, right? They know they're about to get in a fight with each other. They only know they got about 30 seconds tops to try to do some damage before the fight gets broken up. So they're going to go as hard and as fast as they can. Now think about this. If you catch yourself out in the middle of nowhere and all of a sudden you realize you're going to get into a one-on-one confrontation with somebody else, there is nobody coming to help, win, lose, or draw. You're going to fight a lot differently because if you get tired, that's it. That is it. If you get tired out in the middle of nowhere, a one-on-one fight, there's nobody coming to stop the fight. That's it. You're going to lose. You cannot fight if you're exhausted, especially if the other guy isn't. Doesn't matter if you have better technique, better skill set. If you're too tired to throw punches properly, you're going to lose that fight. So it changes the strategy. It changes what you're going to bring to the table to prepare for that fight. And I think it's going to favor grapplers. Now let's take a couple of guys that have already fought in MMA, regular MMA, and take them in a no head strikes league, no rounds, no weight cutting, bare knuckle, and see how that fight goes instead. Very common matchup, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. We already saw these guys fight twice, right? The first fight, Conor gassed out and Nate ended up taking his back and choking him. The second fight, Conor still gassed a little bit, but was able to keep it together for the rest of the fight. It ended up being a very back and forth, very close fight, and Conor got the win, and I agree with that win. But let's say they have a trilogy. Let's fast forward. Let's say they never had the trilogy, and now they're both in their 50s, right? And they want to fight each other again, but they both got a few concussions, let's say. How does that fight play out?
I would say, without the head strikes and everything else, I think it would be vastly different. I do think, honestly, as you know, it always depends on where they're at physically, mentally, and all.
Yep.
Well, coming into it, I would say they're the same age, hypothetically. We'll say hypothetically, same age, 50, whatever. And I think on that note, they're already going to fight differently because the amount they've learned over the years and everything else is changes. Real fighters are always forever evolving. You know what I mean?
Yeah, improvements.
So, sometimes we learn bad things and we have to fix that, break it, or change it. But sometimes we get so stuck into bad habits fighting that it would dictate it would all be endurance on that. Mindset and endurance is what it means.
So you're looking at a guy like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor looks forward to the end of the round because he's probably just tried to knock you out 6 or 7 times, and he's going to go back to his corner. They're going to strategize. They're going to replenish the cardio, and then they're going to go back out there and try to make some improvements. A guy like Nate Diaz, he hates the end of the round. He's like, I got this motherfucker right where I want him. Now he gets to go sit down and make out with his coaches, come up with some ideas to brutalize me, and then squeak out of it and get to the end of the next round. So if you talk about Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor in this other league, no head strikes, bare knuckle, no weight cutting, no rounds, I think that favors Nate Diaz all day.
It does, because
you're
right, because Conor McGregor, he's more of a boxer. Like he's mixed in a lot of things, but he's more of a boxer, and he is going for the knockout most of the time. You're right. So yeah, you're right. I'll go with Nate Diaz.
I will go with Nate Diaz as well, and I still think it's an interesting matchup at first because Conor throws a lot of kicks, Nate doesn't. So even in a no head strikes league, Conor could stay at distance, blast those legs, blast Nate's legs, and move around quite a bit. But I think that Nate would be able to withstand that, eventually start closing the distance on Conor and making him work.
Right.
I don't see, let's say it's a 25-minute fight, I don't see Nate being able to do a lot of damage for the first 15 minutes. But when that cardio window finally breaks for an explosive fighter like McGregor, and everything starts to slow down, and Nate starts to pick up the pace, I don't see how Conor can get through 10 minutes of being absolutely exhausted to get a guy like Nate off of him. And when you're talking about, another 10 minutes and nobody coming to stop that round, I think Nate's eventually going to get top position on McGregor, and he's going to just end up passing his guard. Even though he's not doing a tremendous amount of damage, it's enough to distract Conor from submission defense, and I think eventually he ends up submitting Conor.
I actually agree. I agree with you 100%, especially grappling Nate Diaz got all day.
Right.
Over McGregor. Like that's hands down.
Yeah.
That's just being realistic.
Yeah.
But I agree. And like you said, because McGregor is such an explosive fighter, that's really that. If he doesn't get somebody out and without the rounds and without the rest, you're right.
So I think this league is going to favor fighters that have grappling, very superior grappling, and fighters that have very superior cardio.
Yeah.
I think you're going to find a guy like Conor McGregor or Israel Adesanya, all strikers. Right. Max Holloway, guys that like to stay on the feet. Not to say they don't have any grappling, but they like to fight on the feet. Right. You're not going to want to take away your best weapons.
Right.
On the other hand, a guy like Max Holloway, he is a striker primarily, but he's also a cardio freak and has insane volume and output. So he never gets tired. He's known to throw anywhere from 400 to 700 strikes in a fight. So he's not going to be able to throw headshots at you, but he doesn't have to take headshots either. A lot of people don't know Max Holloway has actually absorbed more headshots than anyone in the history of the UFC. Which is why Conor McGregor said, I'm sorry, you're not the best boxer. Holloway slipped a punch in a live fight, cracked the dude, and stepped away, almost moonwalked away from him while he was slipping punches as he was saying, I'm the best boxer in the UFC, baby. Now, that was a sick moment, but when Conor brought it back to reality, that did kind of make sense. It's like, in that moment, you were the best boxer in the UFC.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see strikers maybe shy away from fighting in a league like that. You're going to see explosive fighters shy away from a league like that. But guys that have cardio all day, guys that have, not the hardest strikes, but a lot of volume, and guys who favor grappling. Right. I just don't see it. I mean, if you take a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov, he hardly ever gets hit anyways.
Right.
But if you take away your only ability to beat him, which is to knock him out, catch him with a knockout, that guy would never lose even a fraction of a fight. So I think, favors grapplers, favors fighters with cardio. And for example, if you take a fight like Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, I think you can comfortably comfortably put your money on Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
But I'd still love to see it.
I would like to see it as well.
Good shit.